Allie with Potomac Beads. Join me in making a nice bezel for your crystal rivolis in an amazing crystal bloom pattern. So get ready to get started. If you need any materials, check out the links below to shop with us online at PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. So to begin, we need to start our simple bezel for our crystal. I have on here 12 15-0s followed by 11 OC beads. I'm using the Duracoat Galvanized Champagne in the 15 and the Crystal Labrador Full in the 11. I have them on about 4 feet of some .006 wildfire beading thread in the white color along with a size 6 or a size 12 needle. So what we're going to do is drop that down to the end of our thread, and we are going to tie that into a knot. I'm not going to worry about having a lot of thread at the end. I'm just going to tie it into a knot, which will eventually burn the extra thread down. Make sure when you're doing this that you don't have a lot of thread in between all of your beads. You want that to be nice and tight in the collection. Once you have your knot tied, you're going to sew through the first 15, 11, 15, and 11. And bring your needle out right after the 11 OC bead. We're going to do another row of 11-0 in this peyote stitch, which is going to mean picking up one 11-0, skipping over the 15, and sewing just through the next 11-0. We're going to end up adding 12 new 11 OC beads as we go in and stitch and add one 11-0 above each one of our 15-0s. Again, continue around in the circle, adding in one 11-0 onto your thread and needle, and then stitching in to the next 11-0 in line. Your 11-0s will sit directly on top of or next to the 15-0s that are there from our first base round. Once you add in your 12 new 11-0 C beads, you're coming out through that first 11-0 C bead where you started to add that new row of 12. You're going to do a step up going through that first 11-0 C bead that you added in this second row of 11-0s. From here, go ahead and grab your 8 OC beads. I'm continuing on with the Duracoat Galvanized Champagne, and I'm going to add one of those 8 OC beads because there's room after each one of my 11 OC beads. Add an 8, sew through the next 11. Add an 8, sew through the next 11. What this is doing then is filling that space, because naturally the circular peyote stitch is going to have more space between the beads as it expands and gets further apart. Going in then, go ahead and finish adding in your 8 OC beads. And as you finish adding in the 8 OC beads, we're going to do the exact same thing of stepping up. So we're going to step up to our exterior row of our 8 O's to add our first row of bling. We also still need to step back. We're going to do a back step, a little shuffle, in order to set and get ready with our bezel. Adding in the last 8-0, I'm going to sew through the first 11-0 that my thread was coming out of. And then actually we're going to go into the bezel. Since I'm coming out of this 11-0, we're going to go around one more time. This time we're going around the same spot, but instead of adding an 8, there's already the 8 there, we're going to go around the same spot here and add in an 11. This 11 is going to sit basically three-dimensional right on top of the other 8-0 that we just added. Pick up an 11, sew through the next 11 in line. Again, the bead will sit right in between that 11 and 8 that lay next to one another. This will be 12 more 11-0s that will go around in the circle and create the base for our Rivoli to sit inside of. Again, add an 11, sew through that same row that we just did to add the 8s, but adding that one additional 11 to sit on top. You can see how it's going to sit then, that three-dimensional, almost like a crown, where the 11 will sit right on top of the 8. Go ahead and add in the rest of them, and then join me back to get ready to pull this in a little further, adding in a new row of seed beads for my bezel set. Once you are finished with your first row of your little 11 O's kind of sticking up, you'll notice that it has a little bit of a crater I'm going in and adding another row of 11 O's. So we finished our first row, stepped up just like we've been doing, and we did a second row of 11 O's. I'm going to add my last one in, going through that first row of 11 O's in that little bump up, and through my second row of 11 through the first one added. So we added a row of 12 and then another row on 12 in between there. From here, we're going to pull it in tight around that 10 millimeter crystal with 15 O seed beads. You're going to add a 15 O seed bead and then sew into that second row of 11s that you just added. Sew in a 15 and through that second row of 11s added. So you're going to continue on adding in your 15 O seed beads, and you'll get a total again of 12 since we started with that 12 count. If you do want to do a larger Rivoli, keep in mind that you can actually attach and continue on with 6 O's on the outer edge to make it a little bit bigger and then catch on to the 8s to make a bigger space, or start out with more seed beads in the original row. When we started out with 24, start out with 26 or 28, and that will get you a nice starting spot for your Rivoli to sit right inside. As you go around and add the 15 O's in place, you'll notice that you want to kind of give a nice tight pull on the thread, which will pull the 15 O's to sit right on top, perfectly casing in the edge of my 10 millimeter Rivoli. Now keep in mind also, if you are using a Swarovski Rivoli versus a Potomac, it's 10.7 millimeters rather than the 10, so the spacing might be a tiny bit different. You may need to add an additional 2 seed beads at the starting row to be at 6. Going in here, or 26. I'll finish up adding my 15s, and then my interior row is finished. So I have my last one that I'm going to add here, going through that first 11 O from my second row. Give a nice tight pull, and that one is perfectly bezeled in there. From here, I'm going to go back through my next 15 O and the next 11 O seed bead and bring my needle out. I'm going to downgrade then, going through the next 11 O kind of below it, going through the 11 O below that one, and that's going to bring me to the exterior 11 O. And then what I'm going to do is sew through the next 6 O. Now I'm on my outer edge, and it's time to add some bling. Coming out the 8 O seed bead now, it's our first chance to add our sparkly crystals. So I'm using the Gold Champagne 2 millimeter in the Potomac Crystal Round, and I'm going around adding one of my crystals between each one of my 8 O seed beads. Now you can see they're pulling it nice and open and wide, and they fit in there pretty perfectly. What you want to make sure when you're doing this circular peyote stitch is that you don't try to force too much in the space between the beads from the previous row. What will happen then is it starts to kind of turn and gets a little waffly as you're working with it. So I'm going around and I'm adding in 12 new beads, and this time we're getting bigger with our crystals. Crystal goes on through the 8O and continuing. When you're doing this and you get to the end, we're going to do a nice step up and get a little bit more crystal and a little bit more bling as we continue to let this bloom. So I pull that last one in there. Make sure again that your crystals sit nicely. Kind of lay it down, push it down, grab any extra thread, and then step up through that crystal onto the next row of our peyote stitch. The next row in between the crystals to get ready to add a next layer is to add an 11O, a 15O, and an 11O, and then go through the crystal that's there. You can see I already have one done. You're going to go around just making sure that that 15O sits at the point like a little picot trim. Once you're finished with that little picot trim, you're going to come through your last crystal, and then I want you to do a step up through your 11 and your 15O seed bead. You're going to exit through your 15O, and this is where we'll do our little loop kind of gathering in order to continue on with the outside of our peyote stitch. Now it's time coming out of that 15O to add our drop. So we're going to add our Briolette 2 15Os. I did 3 already so you could see it. We're adding 2 15Os, sewing through the top of our briolette, 2 more 15-0s, and then into the next 15 at the corner or the point of that picot trim from the previous one. It gets kind of this nice lacy look of the drops hanging down, which will continue the whole way around the pattern. In go 215, grab our drop, and then 215. Again, sew through that next point 15 bead. And there you go. So we're going to continue creating that lacy, nice outer edge of our flower blooming here with our 5x8mm briolettes. As you add the last of your petals into your crystal bloom, you're going to go through that first 15-0 that's on that picot trim that you first started out with. Pull the last one kind of in place and then just sit it down to make that nice weave pattern, flattening it out. And then what we're going to do is get ready to add our bail. So I'm actually going to add the bail coming right out the top there. And what I want you to do is sew through the first 15-0 seed bead. I want you to add one 11-0 seed bead and sew down through the last 15-0 that you just added with the last briolette. What that's going to do is bring that 11-0 right into the middle and kind of sit right there in a little diamond. So back through that same 15 that your thread was coming out of, up through that first 15, and out, and then back through that 11-0 seed bead. After the 11-0 seed bead, I want you to add via a ladder stitch 2 more 11-0 seed beads. So I'll pour a couple out here. So I'm going to take from 1, add 2. So back through that same 11-0 that your thread is coming out of, and let those 2 sit right on top of that 1. Go back through bead number 1, add 2 more beads, go down through bead number 2. That's going to have it sit in that herringbone style. Down through bead number 1, and then what you're going to do is go back up through the 2 beads on the right hand side. This is going to get you a nice herringbone bail. If you don't like the size of this bail, you can always use the 15-0s and make it a little bit smaller. 2 beads go on, down 2 rows, hop over to the other side, up through those 3 beads. 2 more get added, down through 2 beads, make them sit, hop over to the right side, and go up through the 3 beads on the right hand side. Do a couple more rows of this, and then we're going to downgrade it to just 1 bead, and we'll connect it along the back. So we're doing 2, down 2 beads, over to the other side, to the right side, up through 3 beads. You can go through just 1 bead, but this will definitely hold it better. I'm going to continue on doing this herringbone stitch 3 more times, and then on the 4th time I'm going to do just 1 11-0 seed bead. So go ahead and add 2 more rows of your herringbone, and then we'll go through and create our loop. So here I am adding 1 bead instead of 2, going down through 1 bead, over 1 bead to the right, back out through that single bead. What I'm going to do now is bend this towards the back, and I'm going to connect it along the back. Now you have to decide where you want to connect this herringbone stitch. So you can connect it if you want to right below to that one single one, making a loop. I'm going to connect it to my 8 OC bead that fits directly behind because I want my cord to run right along the back. I'm sewing into that 8/0, which is going to round out my bail right along the back there. If you want to see the bail a little bit more, you can connect it to the 11/0 that you had in the front. I'm going to then sew through the 11/0 that my thread is coming out of. Pull that bail nice and tight so you just see it just a tiny little bit in the front, right like that. And then in the back here, sew back down through the 8 OC bead, and I'm going to sew my thread and needle into my project to get rid of the extra thread. When I turn it over now, I have that nice little bail sitting right at the top of my floral bloom. And the nice thing with this crystal bloom pattern is you can stop at any time. So if you don't want it to be this intense, go ahead and stop with just your center. Go ahead and stop with just the crystal, stop with just the 2mm rounds, or continue on and really have fun creating all of these blooming petals. Thanks so much for working on and having fun creating this crystal bloom pendant. Remember, if you need any help with these, check out some of the other videos on the simple circular peyote stitch, the simple bezel with a peyote stitch, and then also how to do nice herringbone stitch. Remember, as always, comment below and let us know what design you're gonna do, what you used, where you stopped, and what crystals were in your design. These comments help out fellow beaders that are designing just like you. Remember, you can also click in the corner there to subscribe to get regular updates from us here at Potomac Beads, as well as shop with us online. Below you can find links to PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. Enjoy your crystal bloom pendant, whatever way you did it and whenever you stopped creating that beautiful crystal design.